first thing I'm going to do, creating our cargo station for Limoux, I'm going to tidy up some of these roads on the end, just so that we can build as tight as possible into this area, just to clear it out, give us some space in this approximate area. I'm going to use a cargo station, basically one track, 80 meters to begin with, just to get the station down and position it, and then we'll use some of the modded platforms to extend it out. So we're going to delete everything that basically comes in with the station, and we're going to use the modded cargo ground platforms, because these can then be painted the same as the ground texture, and these can be added back in. So we can just paint on top of these. We don't get the raised platform, which is a little bit more like a pedestrian passenger type station. So we're going to add in some more tracks and platforms. I'm going to make it up to 160 meters long. Just sort of feels about the right size. Because the original was 80 meters that we dropped down. So we're adding the other tracks, and we're going to have 4 tracks, so 4 platforms to serve those. Rather, 3 platforms, 4 tracks. So just complete this. And we'll need a cargo building of sorts for the station to function. So we'll just position that. Just need to make sure I've got all the platforms in, otherwise the station won't function. And we'll drop our cargo station down. So I'm going to use these cranes to give us the impression that we've got a cargo terminal. I'm just going to position them in various areas around the platforms. So we start to bring this to life then. Just going to invert these ones just to give it a bit of visual difference, visual interest. So these basically transfer containers from the trains to container storage and to trucks waiting alongside to move the containers around. So we're just going to paint the whole thing in this lighter asphalt colour, because the whole thing will be paved. We're going to include all the areas that we're going to use for container storage as well. We'll build an access road. We need to make sure that we keep player ownership of these roads, because we don't want the town to be building anything along these roads. So basically this is where we're also going to build our truck station shortly. So we'll just delete the adjoining roads that we don't need. Connect them back up. Yeah, and I didn't have player ownership on, so just making sure that these roads don't have any buildings plopping up alongside them. So that's a good start. So we've expanded the asphalt area and we've built a fence in the same way that we showed in the previous video. This will make sure that nothing impinges into this site, so the town doesn't expand into here. And now we've added some container assets. So basically these are available in the Steam workshop, and we've just dropped those around. It's given a good impression of a cargo terminal. And we're going to basically build the biggest vanilla truck station. There are lots of different truck station mods in the Steam workshop, but this is a good starting point. This will do for us, and this is going to be where obviously the containers, all the goods are unloaded to and from the container station. That's going to serve the entire valley. This container station, there are only going to be a few of these in each major city, and there'll be lots of trucks. And just like this example from Lyon, a bit of track, sort of storage area, and lots of little side-ins and yard areas just to sort of enhance the cargo station a little bit. And we'll go about seeing if we can put some locomotives and container wagons on these tracks as well. So we've gone ahead and we've added some fake container wagons along the tracks, and basically these are again mods from the Steam workshop, and this is just sort of enhancing it and bringing it to life. We won't use all of these tracks obviously for actual running trains. A lot of these tracks are just for decoration, but it's starting to look quite convincing. And we'll probably leave this there for now. I've also constructed the steelworks. I didn't want to do this live because it took actually quite a long time and I couldn't decide exactly how I wanted to set it up. Did the best I could with the assets available. There are no sort of blast furnace assets or anything of that sort of big industrial scale, but I think it's convincing enough. And it's obviously a little bit more enhanced than the standard steelworks industry that you will get with the vanilla Transport Fever. So the first part of it is the coal station that you can see there, and it's accessed from the main line that we created earlier for the passenger trains, the TGVs, or the terminal. So there will be a additional slower goods line that we will work out exactly where that goes to on the rest of the map. And this junction goes into the container terminal that we've already established, which loops back, and then we've got various loops for the various parts of the steelworks. The first bit being the coal depot. So coal trains will be brought into here, they will unload at this station, and then specific trucks will take the coal further into the steelworks. So it's going to be various little industries and truck stations connecting the various parts of this site. So that truck station feeds that coal terminal there. And that's where the steel is made over at the top right of the screen. Trains can then come around and we can have iron ore trains enter at this point. This is where the iron ore will be unloaded. Again with some assets of static vehicles and trucks decorating that area. And then empty iron ore trains can then exit through the site. Again, trucks will then take the iron ore over to this area, and later on down the line we'll create an actual industry that takes the coal, takes the iron ore, converts it into steel, and the station in front of us is where the steel will be loaded onto steel trains. We're going to create it roughly this area. Obviously we need to then work out on the rest of the map where the steel is going to go to, where the coal and iron ore is going to come from. But we think this probably concludes the industry element of Limoux and the major industry that will take place in this valley. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to develop the small towns that surround Limoux in the valley. And we already created the railway line that connects them up. We haven't set a timetable and we haven't set trains running yet. So we're going to set the small towns, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build basically a road that is going to serve as the access point for the station. We need to do this so the station can connect to the road network, and at a bare minimum we'll have one crossing that crosses over the railway line at each town, because when we build the town won't make any attempt to cross the railway line on its own. So we need to give it a helping hand. Because these are quite small, quiet sections of track, we're going to use level crossings. But you could use bridges or tunnels as appropriate. We're not going to build bus routes or anything or trams in these towns to begin with. We will come back and have a look at that later on. So we'll use the town building tool, set in residential to 200, commercial will have a little bit, say 50, and we'll have no industrial capacity because we don't want any sort of factories or workshops or anything. These are sort of small residential villages, and we'll create it quite close to the station, and you'll see that it's created across the railway because we provided that helping hand with a level crossing. So Hazerbrook, welcome to the party. And then we'll do this for all of the other stations that we set up. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that, but that is a beautiful name. Welcome Bergerac to the party. Argentoul, that's going to be quite close to steelworks, not the greatest place to live, I imagine. Arles and Bayeux. In Bayeux we built a bridge because there are 4 tracks, and I didn't want to disrupt the flow of traffic too much, because this will be a little busier because we'll have some regional trains running through Bayeux as well. So that concludes the town building, and now we are going to start the process of connecting them up. So we're going to basically use the standard 80-kilometre road that is basically the mainstay of most departmental roads in France. Simple 2-lane road, quite fast. And we're going to make sure that player ownership is set to yes, because we don't want the towns and villages to expand along these roads. We want to be in full control of it. We will control the expansion of towns basically later on by building fences that completely surround each town to the limit of that we want each village the maximum extent to be, almost like a settlement boundary. And the fences will be basically hidden in the trees. And so we're basically going to start connecting up the towns together as shown, trying to limit connections. You don't want towns and villages to join together with lots and lots of connections, because the CPU will basically fall over. And we're starting to create this sort of patchwork of road connections. These are the primary routes, and then we'll start within each of these parcels, we'll start filling in with smaller roads, smaller country lanes, maybe some gravel tracks, and these will basically start to define where we're going to have our agricultural land and our forests within these parcels. Again, making sure the player ownership is set to yes. So something like this, and you can look on Google Earth basically anywhere in Europe to give you this sort of idea of what field and agricultural sort of road patterns look like. And it will vary, and it can be quite random, and quite often there's not really any sort of visible logic as to what's been created. So we're going to start looking within each of these smaller parcels now and developing into a farm. Each farm is going to be based around the smallest possible truck station, because the truck station is what is going to allow the farm to supply its crops, or maybe it's a forestry area, it's wood, to the cargo terminals, which we have shown you how we've developed earlier. So we'll have lots and lots of small little truck stations that will serve the cargo area up the top of the screen. And such is life. Most of the distribution in the world takes place through trucks. We don't have trains come into a dedicated train station for every farm. That's kind of how Transport Fever in its sort of vanilla mode runs, which is very fun, great game. I'm trying to go for a little bit more realism here in how we can sort of get some real world mechanics working with our crop and food distribution. So it's basically be a lot of trucks using assets basically freely available on the Steam Workshop. We're using the basic farm industrial buildings, and we're going to just basically create a sort of realistic as possible without creating a huge number of issues, because we have far too many items running. Bear in mind we're going to have probably hundreds of these farms across this whole map. So we place down our assets, whatever you think sort of looks realistic, using the mods that you have available, and that's basically non-functional, but it's going to serve as a sort of visual idea of where the farm is, and obviously use the asset brushes as well to give it as much realism as you dare. So we're sort of worn down by the stone, with the dirt around the farm buildings. And as a starting point for this farm, that's not a bad start. The next thing we're going to do is actually create fields. So again, these are downloadable mods in the mod list in the video description. I've got my current mod list for this, and using the square brush, I'm going to draw out some potato fields. You might see that the orientation of the plough lines is basically set to a world grid. It has nothing to do with how you rotate the brush, so that's not always going to be exactly accurate. But basically we're going to subdivide this parcel into fields, and obviously different field sizes in different regions. Some of the regions that grow sort of a lot of wheat and corn might not have as many subdivisions as perhaps some of the older field boundaries would have had. But you can sort of just judge it by eye. And again, use Google Earth for references if you sort of want to see the sort of scale of fields. And mix up your materials. So we're just using the ploughed field here. You don't obviously want the same texture to go everywhere. You don't have to be too precise, because when you drop the subdivisions, and we're going to use basically trees and bushes to provide the boundary subdivisions, they're going to come with their own ground textures, which are going to take away the sharp edges of the fields anyway. So you just need to sort of approximate it. And here we're going to put some tracks down as well, some additional tracks. Just gives it a little bit more dimension, a bit more life, as it's really annoying when the curved rows do that. Just gives it, say, a bit more realism, because the farmer will obviously be moving through his different fields and subdivisions along dirt roads and farm tracks as well. So that's starting to come to life. And we create some more fields over in this corner. You can use the rotate keys, you don't have to use the toggle actually. So again, just rough it out. Unless you've got sort of 30 years to create a map like this, you might just want to do it roughly, and maybe only do it in the areas that you're actually going to go and look at. in certain areas of the map that you might hang out. So that's where the trucks are going to come from. And we're actually going to have to create a small custom industry, which will just be a very small zone that just creates crops that then get picked up. So we're going to start using trees on small brush for our subdivisions. And basically we're just going to go along the edges of all the fields that we've created. And you'll see how the ground texture comes in with the trees. So it's very difficult to keep a straight edge, but it sort of gives it a more naturalistic look anyway. So we'll basically work this along all of the edges between our roads, our dirt tracks and our fields, and create little individual moments here and there. You might have trees which are protected, trees which are in sort of in little copse, trees which are in a ditch, and you'll see that on Google Earth as well when you look. It's not all very regular. A lot of these boundaries are sort of very old. The more naturalistic the better. Going to create sort of a convincing backdrop to your industry production. So that's all really starting to come to life already. Doesn't take a lot. Don't have to be literal with every asset. Just provide your brain enough to sort of join the dots in like a painting. And maybe don't completely fill it everywhere. Obviously some fields will be open to the road. You have some ditches at the edges that don't have vegetation in. So basically that's a good start, and we're going to have to run that all the way along this valley. So that's going to take a little while. And don't forget to create areas of forest and woods as well, because it's not all farmland, obviously. It's going to be a lot of farmland in the flatter areas that we've created around the towns. But there will definitely be pockets of trees as well, which you'll see on Google Earth. So that's the sort of thing we're going to do, and we're going to run that through the rest of this part of the map, and we will also enclose the settlements with the fences so that we prevent the towns expanding. So join us next time. We will start to develop the timetable for the local trains that will be running through these small villages.